Hello guys, how you doing? Listen, uh, this video here, I want to turn the charts on right now, and what I want to talk about is Venezuela. I'm going to talk about hyperinflation too, and some interesting things that I'm observing. Now, see, Venezuela might be more of a predictor of what the whole world is going to look like in a little while. Now, the reason why is all the central banks of the world have had custodianship of the fiat currencies. And Maduro has had custodianship of the Venezuelan currency, the bolivar. And look, this sign here next to an ATM machine says, "Damn Maduro." You know, they're frustrated. People are frustrated. What surprises me, to be honest, is how the people have taken it up the backside for so long and remained relatively calm and while they're starving to death. You know, it's amazing that the people haven't been able to somehow get out from underneath this situation that is being imposed upon them. But anyway, what Maduro's doing here in his latest bid to tame this soaring inflation, which is actually hyperinflation, is he's actually created another new currency. But it's a currency that he's creating out of frustration. And it's a currency he's hoping is going to work. What did they call it here? Here it is right here. The sovereign bolivar. This is the new currency. It's going to be a new currency. And they're preparing for the release of this sovereign bolivar. They've closed all the banks. Now, here's another aspect. Closed banks. And they don't ask you. This is what's coming. Look at Venezuela as an example. They closed the banks. Did they ask the people? No. They just closed them. Now, what if you got something to do that particular day? How are you going to get your money? That's your money that they have in the bank. And they just arbitrarily close the bank. And they release this new currency, the sovereign bolivar, which is going to have a much greater value at first than the old currency. So what do they expect you to do? Buy these new sovereign bolivars with your old currency, with your old bolivar? Well, your old bolivar was supposed to have a certain worth. It's supposed to be worth a certain amount. You're trusting on them to maintain that certain amount that the bolivar was worth. That was your savings. That's why it's in the bank. Now, all of a sudden, they bring out a new sovereign bolivar. They close the bank, bring out a new sovereign bolivar, and now you're going to have to exchange your old bolivars for new bolivars. How much? 1,000,000 to 1? You know, and then a year or 2 years down the line, these sovereign bolivars, now they instead of a bolivar, it's a sovereign bolivar. Oh, sovereign. Now, suddenly that sovereign bolivar is going to start to lose value too. The people are going to be looking for a way out in Venezuela to try to preserve their wealth. They already are. And if we observe them, they're already turning to Bitcoin. They're already turning to gold and silver as a way to preserve their wealth against these criminal elements who have the central banks all over the earth are criminal elements who have quite literally been they have been put in charge over these currencies, these fiat currencies, and they are not doing a good job. They are actually stealing for themselves, and they are not good custodians. But now there is no custodian for cryptographic currency. The computer is the custodian. You cannot cheat. It takes away the element of cheating. Why these currencies are in so much trouble is because of cheating. All of them the same way. So what we see happening here is we see something developing here. And Venezuela is showing us what is developing. First Venezuela, then South American countries, and then also is spreading over to Europe now. Turkey is involved in it. These currencies, all of them are going to start to reflect what I'm talking about, because this is a trend. What we're looking at is emerging market currencies losing their value, and when they're comparatively speaking, to the dollar. And see, you got to understand, what is the dollar being compared against that's holding up its value? It's being compared against a basket of other currencies. These other currencies start to lose value. It makes the dollar look stronger when the dollar's buying power maybe is not stronger at all. It's just that it's being compared, what it's being compared to. Now, if we have an emerging market crisis, and these countries, their currencies in reflection to the dollar are going to go down, and this trend is going to continue. I'm up here in Canada. I'm looking at the Canadian dollar right now at roughly 76 cents. We're looking at it possibly going into the 60s. Right? Now, what that's going to do is that's going to cause much more inflation for these emerging market countries. Whereas the dollar, if this trend continues, the dollar will remain high and strong amongst all these currencies. You'll also have to understand that the bond market, the American bond market, has got probably some of the best rates out there right now. And you've got the strongest dollar that it's being weighed as a basket in. And so what you're looking at is, this is one of the things that's making these bonds so appealing. I did some research into this, and the Federal Reserve is not buying their own bonds. It's institutional investors and so on that's been buying up bonds, buying tremendous amounts of U.S. government issued paper. But the thing about it is the Federal Reserve is, these bond prices are staying down, these yields are down, and as long as these yields are down, they can continue with their project of rolling these bonds over in their favor and collecting the money and then destroying. I believe they destroy the money. It takes it out of the financial system where they inject. It's the exact opposite of what they did during quantitative easing. But what we're seeing here, we're seeing we can make a comparison to the United States being Rome, and the periphery countries always disintegrate before the empire. On the way down, when an empire is collapsing, it disintegrates around the periphery first. It's almost like a person that's freezing to death. Their limbs will freeze first, their toes will freeze first, their fingertips will freeze first, then their feet will freeze, and it slowly makes its way to the core of the body. Well, this is the same darn thing. We're seeing the trouble starting to come to countries like Venezuela, countries like Turkey, and so on, Italy, Spain, Portugal, and it's spreading in different places, these problems. Canada, Australia, even China. China is considered to be an emerging market. As the problem spreads, eventually it makes its way back to the core, because possibly the biggest debtor nation of them all, the huge debt, is the United States. The United States is bankrupt on a mark-to-market basis. They're already bankrupt. And so these assets that they're buying into, not only that, one of the other things that this shows you about this soaring inflation in Venezuela and the poverty and the problems that these people are having, shows you how long these people will actually stick with a fiat currency. They will stay with a fiat currency. Unbelievable how long they'll actually stick with it, and how long the people will take it and not react, will continue to try to use their currency. This also shows that when the hyperinflation does finally come to our shores, that it's not going to be something that's over probably quick. It's going to be something we're going to have to deal with maybe for a year or 2 years. I'm expecting period, a very short-lived period of deflation that's going to lead us into the hyperinflation. And when the hyperinflation finally begins, it could last longer than we think, because the people will cling to that money to the very end. They will cling to it when they are selling the money by the pound, say the US dollar, when they're wrapping it up with rubber bands and they don't care what the denominations are on the bills. They just lay it on the scale and you buy it by the pound. You know? When it's that worthless, they will still be using it for trade and barter. The cash. They'll still be using it. And by that time, I can't begin to tell you how high gold, silver, and cryptocurrencies are going to be. They're going to be absolutely priceless. Because all of this worldwide, all of this fiat currency, all of this fiat empire that's been built on credit, when it all collapses and the whole thing goes into the inevitable hyperinflation that it's going to go into, and math is the prover that points out that we cannot avoid this hyperinflation. We cannot put it off endlessly. We can kick the can down the road for a while, but eventually it's going to lead to this hyperinflation. When we finally get to this hyperinflation, this is going to be the driver behind the cryptocurrencies. It's going to be the driver behind the gold and the silver as going back to a store of value, something that's really got some worth to it, rather than something that's going to turn into mush. And that's what all these fiat currencies are eventually going to turn into, mush. And this is what's happening in Venezuela. This is what's starting to happen in Turkey. Eventually, when too many countries start to go down this road, it's going to lead to a deflationary period in the United States, where the United States currency goes to the moon. They're going to go into the dollar as a safe haven. I see it coming. And at that point in time, that's when your gold and silver is going to disappear, and that's when the Fed's going to have to react. That's when they're going to turn it around. That's when the dollar's going to go into the hyperinflation as well. Worldwide, people are going to lose confidence in fiat currencies. And when this happens, the Bitcoin and the other cryptocurrencies are positioning themselves to carry the load of transactions that the dollar-based currency system carries now. Not billions, but millions of transactions every day occur in the dollar-based system. And these cryptographic currencies are going to have to carry these transactions. These transactions are not going to be able to be carried by gold and silver. So gold and silver are going to be, and they're going to remain as a safe haven asset that you actually hold in your hand as a store of value. But they, just like the cryptographic currencies, are going to go up in value. The gold and the silver is going to go massively up in value too. And so in the end, what it's going to come down to, it's going to come down to a system where you cannot buy cryptographic currencies with fiat currencies anymore, because the fiat currencies won't be worth enough. In other words, to buy even the littlest, tiniest bit of cryptographic currency, you're going to need wheelbarrowfuls of money. And it won't make sense anymore. But you will be able to buy them if you have gold and silver. You will be able to buy cryptographic currencies because the worth of the gold and silver will be a lot. And it won't take that much gold and silver. Gold and silver is going to go up massively in price. When you compare it, gold and silver, to the fiat currencies, gold and silver is going to go up so much that they're going to be priceless in fiat. But there will be a value set in gold and silver in cryptographic currencies. Maybe perhaps an ounce of gold might be worth something like 1/10 of a Bitcoin or something like that. I don't know exactly what it'll be, but by that time you won't be able to buy Bitcoin, period, with fiat currencies. You would need so much fiat. You would need like $1 zillion or something, to buy some gold, or buy some Bitcoin. It's just not going to work. And eventually, they're going to be right in the situation that Venezuela finds itself in right now, where the dollar is not going to be worth diddly squat. It ain't going to be worth almost nothing. And then they'll bring out, like he's done here, a sovereign bolivar. What's the difference between the sovereign bolivar and the bolivar? Well, right now, we got the dollar. What's the difference? They'll bring out a sovereign dollar. You know, it's just the same deal. And the sovereign dollar will have a little bit of worth, like these sovereign bolivars. At first, they'll have a little bit of worth, and then that worth will disintegrate back because it's just the same old game being played all over again. And the people know that. Once they lose confidence in these fiat currencies, bringing out some new glamorizing some new fiat currencies, only going to give it value for a short period of time. That value given it by decree, and then it's going to disintegrate just like the one before it. Because unless you back it with something, unless you put something behind it to back it, and now this is too late. You might say to yourself, well, they will come in and they will back the value up of the dollar by using gold or silver. Once the world is in the mindset that we don't want fiat anymore because fiat disintegrates in value, once they're in that mindset, and once they're in the mindset of seeing cryptographic currency always going up in value because it's deflationary, they're going to make that transition over to the cryptographic currencies. And once they've made that transition, why would they go back to a fiat currency backed by gold? Why would they do that? Once they've made that transition into the cryptographic currencies, and the cryptographic currencies always go up in value, why would they make that transition back into a fiat currency backed by gold? Now, if they were to make the move now and start backing the fiat currencies with gold, then it might be a different story. They would get the people moving in that direction ahead of time. Then it might be a different story, but they're not doing that. If they do decide to do that, it's going to be a last-ditch effort to fight against the cryptographic currencies, and it won't work. Because it's a last-ditch effort, the people will already be moved into the new cryptographic currencies, and they won't want to go back to a fiat currency that's backed by gold anymore. So if they want that move, if they want to make a move into a cryptographic currency, they need to do it now before the fiat currencies take their position of power. Once these fiat currencies take their position of power, there's no going back anymore. Once the wealth is transferred over into the new cryptographic currencies from the fiat currencies, then the people's trust will be in the cryptographic currencies, and the cryptographic currencies are going to earn that trust. And the reason why is the controllers, the ones who actually distribute and control the cryptographic currencies, are computers. And you can't cheat against them. They cannot be bought off. They cannot be, there's no cheating in the system. Whereas the system we got right now is totally riddled with corruption. Everybody's on the take right now. This is all going to come to an end pretty soon. And by studying Venezuela here, we can see that once these hyperinflations start and they accelerate, it's pretty much all over. This is going to be the driving force for the cryptographic currencies and for gold and silver, because gold and silver can exist side by side with the cryptographic currencies as a store of value. They don't have to be. You don't have to have a cryptocurrency that's backed by gold and silver. Don't have to have that. You can have the cryptographic currency be worth a certain amount of gold, just like the dollar's worth a certain amount of gold, or gold is worth a certain amount of dollars. That's the same thing. You can have gold being worth so much Bitcoin, and you can have Bitcoin being worth so much gold. So you can make a transference between physical gold and Bitcoin. It's already being done. But the value of gold against Bitcoin, the Bitcoin is going to take off much higher ultimately, and gold is going to try to catch up because the value of gold is going to go exceedingly high. But what's really going to lose in the end is going to be the dollars and the dollar-based system. And this is signs of what's coming. Venezuela here. The world's a mess. And these people in Venezuela, I'm absolutely amazed that they've lasted this long. It says, inflation has made it difficult to find paper money. The largest bills under the outgoing cash system was a 100,000 Bolivar note, equal to less than 3 cents. So 100,000 Bolivars was 3 cents. A cup of coffee costs more than 2 million Bolivars. $2 million for a cup of coffee. This is where we're headed. So I'll tell you what, just transfer that to dollars. It says a cup of coffee costs more than $2 million. So pretend the dollars went through the hyperinflation. By that time, it's not worth, say you've got $50,000 in the bank right now. Think of how much silver and gold and how much Bitcoin you can buy with that $50,000. But in the end, it's not going to buy you a cup of coffee. And it's not going to be worth the gasoline to drive to the bank to get that $50,000 out of the bank. At that point in time, they've stolen your $50,000 through inflation. They've stolen it without taking it out of the bank. The $50,000 is still in the bank, but it's only worth not even a cup of coffee. I mean, they've stolen your money. Because think what you can buy with it now. So that's food for thought. Thank you guys for listening. Like and subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next show. Bye-bye.